Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome to some nightmare fuel. I'm Stuart from Unleash the Ghouls, and if you've not seen the new Netflix movie The House, you've either been turned into a piece of furniture, or you've not become a subscriber of our channel and seen us milk this baby dry recently. Anyway, I wanted to take a moment away from Connor's breakdown and theory videos and delve into one of the key pieces of nightmare fuel that The House delivers in the form of this weird little old man named Van Schoonbeek. Van Schoonbeek is the main catalyst for the ultimate demise of the family that we're watching in this film, but it's how he causes their downward spiral for his own narcissistic pleasure that really stands out as more than just evil and ultimately twisted and sadistic while deriving pleasure from watching other people suffer. Before Van Schoonbeek arrives, we see the family living in a humble, modest home, obviously not having much, but being a happy, loving family where they are clearly content with what they have. However, after a bit of a verbal beatdown by some uptight, rich, arrogant, affluent relatives, Raymond, the dad, begins to feel like a failure and that he isn't really providing enough for his family, so he turns to the bottle, attempting to drown his sorrows, ending up drunk in some woodlands late at night. And enter Van Nightmare Fuel Beek himself. Schoonbeek arrives in a beautifully lit carriage and Raymond is instantly drawn to it. By the way, before I continue, I don't know if anyone else noticed with The House, but each of the three stories in this film are being drawn to some light as a theme throughout. In this episode we have the light of the carriage, the light in the dining room which fascinates the family so much that they even ignore their own children, and then ultimately the light of the fire at the end of the film that kills the parents. In the second episode, the main rat character, his favourite gadget that he's trying to show off in this house he's trying to sell is his bright glowing rotisserie oven. And in the third film, the whole world is filled with fog until they turn their house into a boat and sail towards, you guessed it, the light and their inevitable future. Go back and watch it again and look out for all the lighting. It gives the whole thing just a very slightly different context and something to look out for. Anyway, Schoonbeek. Schoonbeek makes a deal with the dad in his glowing carriage, which we soon find out is an offer to build his family an entirely new home, with the only terms and conditions being that they have to give up their old house, including all of their possessions. However, they'll be given everything they need in their new home, so it seems like the deal of the century. Predictably though, it's too good to be true. But this is where the nightmare fuel really starts to begin. Van Schoonbeek has effectively preyed on a needy family and used their desires against them to unravel some kind of horrendous, monstrous plan. At this point though, we just aren't aware of what that plan is, and the film hasn't really made out that it's all that ominous, other than the carriage itself, which is obviously a bit eerie and there's something not right about it. But as a viewer, we obviously know there's not going to be a nice end to this because, well, this film would be proper shit if they just moved into a nice house, were really happy, and that was it. Anyway, I digress. They move into this new home and things seem really great, but Mabel starts to notice things like the construction workers who are improving their new mansion are almost zombie-like, never speaking or showing any emotion. They just kind of stare. The house is basically just this never-ending maze filled with empty voids, which again may or may not, I don't know. I'm only speculating here like the rest of us, but they might be some kind of reference to when you chase these materialistic desires, they almost always end up empty on the inside when you get there. Deep. We at least know that Van Schoonbeek has manipulated the family with the offer of these material items and a lavish lifestyle, and we only see that furthered when he urges them to wear clothes that match the house. He actually embarrasses them into doing so by taking the piss out of their old and ugly garments. Ironically, I think they look better in what they were wearing before than looking like these fucking sofas, but who am I to judge? The next time we get a huge red flag about Van Twat himself is when we find that his assistant, Thomas, is actually just a paid actor, and he's been pushing the father to burn all of their old possessions so they only have the new stuff at their disposal. By the time one of the children can try and tell the parents something is very wrong here, the parents have already been consumed by greed and have become part of the house itself. How, I hear you ask? Well, fantastic question, our new subscriber, because you hit the subscribe button, thank you very much. By turning into an armchair and a pair of curtains, of course. Yeah, I'm not joking. But if you haven't watched it, I do realise how absurd that sounds, but if you go watch it, I promise I'm just selling it like absolute shit here and it's actually quite good. And if I'm lying, I'll just buy you a massive house and give you everything you ever need so long as you give up your current home and possessions, alright? Anyway, we actually see Van Schoonbeek properly at this point, and he's just stood there laughing at the parents while they're effectively cemented to the spot by the very fact that they're now just inanimate objects. He just laughs, sadistically, almost indulging his own destructive outcome that he's achieved. At this point, really, his plan is completed when the burning possessions eventually catch the rest of the house on fire, and the furniture parents both burn to death while the children have to escape out of a window, and we see them walking through the snow to their own safety, leaving them parentless and and alone in the dark, ultimately cold and devastated. When we look back at the house though, we can see that it still stood there, relatively unaffected, just waiting for presumably its next victims of Van Schoonbeek. On the face of it, Van Schoonbeek is just a bit of a cock, but when you really dig into what he's done here, that's where I really believe he earned himself his spot in our Nightmare Fuel series. So let me just conclude this video by summarising my afterthoughts and why I wanted to slow down a little bit and go back and cover this character more in depth than Connor has in his theory and breakdown videos. By the way, if you haven't seen them, they're well worth a watch because Connor smashed it. So to summarise, firstly, as I mentioned earlier, we know he's ominous from the very get-go. The glowing carriage showing up just to make a deal with a drunk man in an emotionally volatile state, and when he's at his lowest, just shows that he's opportunistic, manipulative, and he preys on the weak, conjuring up plans to entwine them in some sycophantic game. He'll use someone's pain against them to get his own way and then flaunts his wealth to get what he wants with ease. If you put that in a real world context, that's almost exactly what we see echoed in elitist society. Super wealthy individuals doing these heinous things because they can, and they know that they can pay their way out of any repercussions. Ultimately, it's why we end up with billionaires living on their own islands and paying fuck all in tax, or even other islands where nonces just import young girls to abuse, or more lately we see cheese and wine parties that the elite can have, but you can't even see your nan in her own garden because she's dying of COVID. Van Schoonbeek is this kind of person. He's above the law purely because he can be, and he does what the fuck he likes. And to make that worse, while he abuses that position willingly to cause pain and misery on others, he laughs sadistically as it happens. After making a deal, he doubled down on ensuring it effectively trapped their family into his scheme. He forces them to give up their home, burn their possessions, and even takes the shirts off their backs. The desire to better themselves is used to manipulate them into undesirable positions, and they're treated like pawns. Again, this somewhat mirrors society because this exact thing happens. Keep the poor poor and the rich rich. But not wanting to stop there, he has an act to convince them that they're doing the right things by following these rules. When we see the actor broken in the dark, we actually see this like huge version of Schoonbeek over his shoulder, almost as if he's in Thomas's head and overpowering him somehow. It's almost like a schizophrenic psychosis. He even has the workmen, who don't seem to be allowed to communicate in anything other than these weird blank stares from afar, remove the stairs in the house, trapping the family into specific areas. It's not really discussed or overly played up in the film, but by this point he's effectively separated the family, robbing them of their own identities and lifestyle, and coerced them into a game which will eventually kill them. When that game is said and done, and the parents are in fact murdered, killed by the house fire whilst they can't do anything to escape, the children become orphaned by this, left alone to fend for themselves, and we see them leaving the house at night, walking into the snow-covered forest, presumably just left to die from frostbite, purely because they were surplus to this weird game. All in all, I think this manipulative approach to basically destroying an innocent family for no reason other than his own enjoyment makes Van Schoonbeek here nightmare fuel of the elite variety. But what do you lot think? Let me know in the comments below, unless of course you've been turned into a curtain and can't reply because you don't have hands anymore. Yeah. Cheers.